I'm Richard Wallace, and this is The Old Quarter. Conflict in Gaza, Lebanon, and the wider region has deeply impacted the balance of power in the Middle East, pushing the Iran-aligned so-called Axis of Resistance into the spotlight. In this episode, I'll look at how Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, and other actors are recalibrating their strategies, facing new challenges, and testing the limits of their influence. So, what does this all mean for the future of the region? Let's dive in. Israel's military response to the attacks of October the 7th triggered unprecedented reprisals from Iran-aligned armed groups and has prompted a significant shift in regional power dynamics. Confrontations between Israel and these groups have always been marked by deep asymmetry, most recently visible in Israel's overwhelming dominance in the skies over Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and even Iran during the 12-day war in June. Yet these armed groups have long posed a serious security challenge. Operating under the banner of the so-called Axis of Resistance, this coalition of movements shares broad strategic objectives and Iranian support, but its members act autonomously, guided by their own capabilities and threat perceptions. At various points over the past 23 months, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran-aligned militias in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen have all carried out operations claiming to act in solidarity with Palestinians under attack in Gaza. The conflict in Gaza has resonated far beyond the confines of the Strip, and today the regional security environment looks very different from before October the 7th. Turning first to Hamas. The movement has been severely weakened by Israel's relentless assault, interrupted only by two short-lived ceasefires. These pauses, brokered by the US, Qatar, and Egypt, were transactional in nature and quickly collapsed, in large part due to the absence of sustained or meaningful American pressure on Israel to de-escalate. The ceasefire agreements reached in January collapsed just 2 months later, following Israeli airstrikes. But before hostilities resumed, then Secretary of State Antony Blinken admitted that Hamas had likely replaced almost all of the fighters it had lost up to that point. That raised serious questions about the long-term effectiveness of Israel's campaign. Indeed, Israeli media recently reported that Hamas now has an estimated 40,000 fighters, roughly the same as before October the 7th. Its military capabilities are degraded, but far from eliminated. Hamas continues to launch sporadic attacks, including a deadly ambush in Beit Hanun in July, and an attack on an IDF armored vehicle in Gaza City at the end of last month, in which several soldiers were wounded. The IDF has stated that 900 Israeli soldiers have been killed so far. The death toll is expected to rise as Israeli forces push into Gaza City, despite international outcry over the new military offensive. The UN has already declared a famine in the densely populated area. Israel has demanded that Hamas disarm and its leaders step down and go into exile, an echo of the PLO's departure from Lebanon in 1982. But such demands, from Hamas's perspective, amount to strategic surrender, and the movement's leaders are highly unlikely to agree. They assess that disarmament would leave them vulnerable to a future Israeli offensive designed to eradicate the movement entirely, and would open the door to permanent Israeli occupation of Gaza. Meanwhile, Gaza itself lies in ruins. 63,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly women and children, with many more unaccounted for under the rubble in Gaza. According to the UN, 70% of structures have been damaged or destroyed. Areas such as Beit Hanun and Rafah have been almost completely flattened. Widespread famine looms as Israel continues to restrict the flow of aid. The controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, operating alongside the IDF, has replaced the UN as the main channel for distribution. But the UN Human Rights Office reports that hundreds of Palestinians have been killed in or around these aid zones, which have been described as death traps. Eyewitnesses testify that most of these killings have been carried out by Israeli forces patrolling the perimeters. Gaza's economy has collapsed. Its universities and schools, crucial for any long-term development, have been decimated. The UN, EU, and World Bank estimate $50 billion will be required for reconstruction. Against this backdrop, it is difficult to see how peace can emerge from Gaza's scorched soil. To the north, Hezbollah, long one of the most powerful armed non-state actors on the global stage, is under mounting pressure. Lebanon's government and army, backed by the US, Arab and Western governments, have pressed the group to relinquish its arsenal. Earlier this month, the Lebanese government even voted to disarm Hezbollah and tasked the armed forces with drawing up a plan. The Trump administration wants the movement to fully disarm by the end of the year. For now, Hezbollah has kept a relatively low profile. Since last November's ceasefire, it has avoided large-scale offensives while withdrawing most fighters north of the Litani River. But the group has paid a steep price. Much of its senior leadership has been killed, and its supply routes from Iran through Syria have been severed since the collapse of the Assad regime. Domestically, Hezbollah faces a weary population in Lebanon. Lebanon's economy has faced multiple severe crises in recent years, and many Lebanese have no appetite for another devastating war. Western powers have hinted that reconstruction aid will depend on disarmament. Hezbollah may agree to scale back in order to keep its place in Lebanon's fragile politics, but full disarmament is improbable while Israel maintains a presence in the south. Indeed, in a speech last month, Hezbollah's leader Naim Qassem strongly rejected any notion of disarmament whilst Israel continues to occupy territories in the south or carry out attacks in Lebanon. The movement was founded to resist Israeli occupation, and that identity remains central. So, what of Iran? The 12-day war in June exposed serious vulnerabilities. Israel penetrated Iran's airspace, destroyed surface-to-air missile systems, and infiltrated its security apparatus. In response, Tehran may now focus on strengthening its homeland defenses by replenishing its ballistic missile arsenal, bolstering its air defenses, and enhancing its cyber capabilities. Supporting the regional operations of its allies may now be a lower strategic priority. Yet Iran will not abandon its network of allies in the region entirely. With supply lines to Hezbollah disrupted, Tehran may double down elsewhere, notably in Yemen and Iraq. CENTCOM recently reported the interception of a vast shipment of Iranian arms destined for the Houthis, showing that support continues despite strategic defeats. In Iraq, powerful Iran-aligned militias, many integrated into what are known as the Popular Mobilization Forces, have been strikingly cautious. These groups fear that escalating against Israel could provoke a crippling response. They also prioritize preserving their political influence and economic interests at home. Watching Hezbollah's difficulties, they appear to be treading carefully. Their restraint underlies a key point. The Iran-led alliance of armed non-state actors is not monolithic. Each group acts on its own calculus, weighing risks and opportunities. One armed non-state actor that has attracted a lot of attention is the Houthi movement in Yemen. By targeting Red Sea shipping, the Houthis have propelled themselves onto the global stage. Their aim is to increase the cost of Israel's war in Gaza and exert pressure on Western states that have provided support to Israel by disrupting a vital trade artery. And the campaign has significantly impacted global trade. Insurers are alarmed, global shipping has been rerouted, and maritime traffic is still well below pre-war levels. Their profile has risen in the Arab world and the West, where some view them as defenders of the Palestinian cause. Yet, critics and experts are quick to draw attention to the Houthis' authoritarian rule and suppression of dissent in the territories they control in Yemen. Rooted in Yemen's Zaidi Shia community, the Houthis draw on a history of marginalization. Militarily, they are deeply entrenched across the north and along the Red Sea coast. Western and Gulf states have concluded that dislodging them would require a full-scale ground offensive, an option that lacks political support. They are fearful of potential Houthi retaliation against Gulf energy infrastructure in the event of future conflict escalation, which would severely disrupt oil supplies and fuel inflationary pressures that could rock global markets. The Houthis have also demonstrated reach beyond Yemen, periodically launching missiles and drones at Israel, and in one coordinated attack with Iran, inflicting notable damage. Their continued operations and entrenched position in northern Yemen suggests they will remain a potent regional force. However, they are not impervious to Israeli reprisals, as shown by last week's airstrike on the capital Sana'a that killed the Prime Minister of the Houthi-controlled government in the north. So what does this all mean? Despite the heavy blows dealt to the so-called axis of resistance, talk of its demise and of a new regional order is perhaps premature. The underlying drivers of the Palestine-Israel conflict and wider regional tensions linger, and Israel's current leaders feel greatly emboldened by recent military successes against Hezbollah and Iran. However, as long as Israel prevents a viable and sovereign Palestinian state from coming into being as part of a two-state solution, core underlying political grievances that animate conflict actors in the region will remain unaddressed. Scholars of the conflict have consistently argued that the Palestine-Israel conflict is a primary driver of recruitment for armed non-state actors arrayed against Israel in the region, and of broader geopolitical tensions between Arab states and Israel. The bottom line is that Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories, including areas captured in the 1967 Six-Day War such as East Jerusalem and the West Bank, as well as Gaza, continues. Prime Minister Netanyahu has consistently opposed a sovereign Palestinian state. His ministers threaten annexation of the occupied West Bank if Western countries press ahead with recognition of the State of Palestine. The UK, France, Canada, Belgium and Australia have declared that they will do so this month, either conditionally or unconditionally. Meanwhile, Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank are expanding, the demolition of Palestinian homes and infrastructure continues, and Israel is set to maintain a long-term presence in the Gaza Strip. Amidst deepening Israeli occupation, the absence of a credible peace process towards a two-state solution, and a ruthless Israeli military campaign in Gaza, which the International Court of Justice has said could plausibly involve acts of genocide, violence will, for some, continue to be seen as a pathway to political change. That's all for this episode on The Old Quarter. If you found this analysis to be useful and want to hear more deep dives into the politics of religion, power and conflict, please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you're on Substack, you can also subscribe there to get new episodes and articles straight to your inbox. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.